Welcome to the 7 Plant Types Every Organic Gardener Needs to Grow webinar. This is a series of webinars we have planned for the year, and this is the second plant design. Last month we did garden design, which was very exciting. And I wanted to start out with this question: why grow your own food? Now feel free, those of you who have just come in, to use the chat box that's on the right. And I and Dave, my husband, who is on the other side of the screen, Zone 5B, thank you. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Kathy. I think yeah. So feel free to put your answers here, and I will scroll down and I'll see what you say about why you should grow your own food. Now, why are we here today? Why are we growing our own food? This is us, Dave and Nikki, in front of our small townhouse in the DC suburbs, and we, in 2006, we had our first child. We have 4 kids, and the first one was diagnosed with failure to thrive, and she was 18 pounds for like 18 months. I don't know if I have that right, but it felt like 18 months. And in 2008, we had our second child, and he had food allergies as well. That was what was causing the failure to thrive in the first place. And so we had to think about what we were growing, what we were eating, what was the food that we were eating. And long story short, this led us to grow our own food, try and fail miserably, and spend a lot of money, which we don't want you to do, in order to figure out how to grow our own food. And so we stumbled upon permaculture soon enough. And since then, we start by eating organic. Organic is expensive in the markets. Then we start growing our own food. And we realized that our own food was healthier, tasted better, was more convenient if located like right in your backyard, was cheaper, and that we could teach our kids about, and ourselves about, nature. And this is our son, Ethan, now at 7 years old, and some of his friends at school where we teach. Their Title I school is called Rolling Ridge, and we teach a club, an after-school garden club called Sprouts. And it's a lot of fun because the kids are just mesmerized by the food that they're growing. And this is Longley, a retreat house that I attended this past year. And here I had a chance to meditate on the encyclical of Pope Francis on the care for a common home. Now, this is not coincidental that a lot of religious leaders have spoken about the need to care for the environment, because I think the awe and the majesty of the natural world feeds our faith, and the care of creation and the process of growing our own food feeds not just our bodies, but our souls. So many good things came out of that retreat, one of which is this webinar, because the Pope called for environmental education that made a leap towards the transcendent. And in many ways, as I started growing, I realized that by analogy, I was coming to know the Creator through nature. Now, why are you here today? Let me check your answers for this one. Live a healthier lives by being connected to what you're consuming. Shan, thank you. That's true. Either video won't load. For me, either. Video won't load. Try exiting out of Google, out of webinars on air, and getting back in. Rachel, I hope you have better luck by doing that. Rutger, organic isn't expensive. Non-organic is cheap, and cheap for a reason. That's right. True indeed. So real food costs a lot. And once you start growing your own food, you realize, what? Kale is $3? I grew my own kale, and it's not worth $3. It's worth 10 for one kale, because of all the things I've learned along the way, and all the love I've given it. So I wanted also to start everyone out by knowing what permaculture was in the first place. So permaculture has been many things for many people, but this infographic from Permaculture Research Institute in Australia sums it up really succinctly. And I believe we focus, what is permaculture? It is a design system for ecological and sustainable living, integrating plants, animals, buildings, people, and community. And it's based on ethics, and we focus on permaculture gardens, and we believe that gardens are based on intentional design, based on observation and the governing principles of permaculture, which we will discuss as we go on. So the 3 ethics that permaculture is based on are: first, earth care, not because it's the most, it is the basis of life, and that's where we start chronologically. And then people care, because we don't exploit one another or use one another. And out of this comes fair share. And in that spirit of fair share, where we give the excess that we have. In fact, in that encyclical of the Pope, he says the natural environment is a collective good. And if we make something our own, it's only to administer it for the good of all. So in that spirit, we have a raffle at the end of this webinar for a permakit. Now, we gave a raffle away as well in the first, and I don't know whether we're going to give one the next round, but for this time, everybody who's on the call or registered with us is going to be drawn through random.org, and my loving tech support husband, Dave, will take care of that at the end. So to review, webinar 1, we taught you what the 10 crucial steps were to prepare your garden, to prepare your space. And at the end of the webinar, you came up with something like this, which was to just assess, look at your garden in 10 dimensions, assess it, and know from there on where you should be putting general things, general items or elements, and to look at it as a whole. This is the paper that I used as I was presenting that one along the way. So what is a plant guild in the first place? This plant guild that we're teaching you is based on Robert Hart's 7-layer food forest. Robert Hart was a horticulturalist in England who believed that a productive garden mimicked a food forest, and for good reason. Okay. Why a forest? So a food forest mimics the architecture and beneficial relationships of plants and animals in a forest. A forest system, it's very efficient, it's integrated, it's redundant. If one tree falls down, that's okay. There are other trees there to still function. There's no maintenance in this ecological system. No need for mowing. There's only harvest and propagation. And all materials are organic and nutrients are cycled within this system. And that's why, to make your backyard abundant as can be, a food forest is a really good way to start. So what is a plant guild? Another way to call it would be a polyculture. It is, as I don't like reading slides, but I will, harmonious assembly of species clustered around a central element, plant or animal. So I like to think of plant guilds as fractals in your garden, that you would be having one guild and an iteration of the same principles of those 7 layers elsewhere, so that you create a whole abundant interactive system. Polyculture design really relies more on species interaction than on configuration. So here's a bit about the soil food web, where you can see that underneath the soil, your soil should not be dead. It should be living and teeming with microbes, as they say, living. Even nematodes, which are considered as hazardous to plants by some gardeners, have their role to play in that they eventually decompose and become carbon that are consumed by the plants. So this is a tight web. The more redundant, the more interactions there are, the more stable your system is. And that is what we want to create above ground as well. So we maximize the benefits of each species to the others. But when we choose our plants, we want it to be of convenience to us, of course, and we want to make sure that we choose those plants that will give us the most benefit. So the first layer, and here I go, I'm going to sing, and I'm going to check your answers to see if you can name this tune. Let me just get my lyrics. Happiness is finding a mushroom. All right, I will check your answers when I get to the next layer, but that is the first part of this song. So mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of mycelia. And fungi are a kingdom on its is a kingdom of its own, because if you remember the 5 kingdoms, Plantae, Animalia, fungi is a kingdom, protozoa, eukaryotes, and prokaryotes, eukaryotes, and now they've come up with a 6th kingdom called Archaea, which is fairly recent. And when we talk of fungi as a layer, it's not really in the original layer of Robert Hart, but it's an important layer nonetheless, and they come in 3 types. So fungi in general are decomposers. But if they're saprophytic, that's what they generally do. They just go into rotten logs and they decompose them, and they get their carbohydrates from the rotten logs, and they fruit that way. If they're parasitic, they kill a plant or an animal in order to get their nutrients. And so actually Paul Stamets, who's a renowned mycologist that we admire, is working on a patent for an organic or a mushroom-based or fungi-based insecticide, if you will. And he said it's coming. I actually wrote them about it. Wrote the people in Fungi Perfecti asking when it would be out, because I need it right now. They said in about 2 years. This is the mycelial network. It's also called the Internet of the Soil because it's a vast network of interconnected. They're 1 cell wall thick mats, and in 1 cubic inch of soil, that network can go 8 miles. They say, Paul Stamets likes to say that fungi are more closely related to humans than they are to plants, because they breathe oxygen, they inhale carbon dioxide. He believes they're sentient, and they can send messages across your yard saying, hey, this plant needs a little bit of this nutrient, and that plant, so send it over here using our network. So that's increased nutrient uptake is helped by the fungal layer. Mycelium stays in constant molecular communication with its environment, devising diverse enzymatic and chemical responses to complex changes. So he's also mentioned that historically, anything that is partnered with fungi has survived catastrophic earth events. So it's always good to partner with fungi. This is a picture of a nematode, that long worm, being attacked by fungal hyphae, which are the strands of mycelium in the soil. So they deter nematodes if they are collaborating with your plants, which they do. Mycelium always collaborate with the plants. They are the primary decomposers, and because that is so, you can, Paul Stamets says this, you can create soil from sawdust, rich living soil from sawdust in 3 to 4 months, not a year, if you grow oyster mushrooms on them. So you can see that the sawdust, this is from Hermes.com, this gentleman had grown these mushrooms from sawdust, they had decomposed that sawdust into soil. They are edible, of course, another thing. So what kind of mushrooms do you like to cook? Now I'm going to toggle back the screen and see. Okay. I still can't load the video. Uh-oh. Okay. Learn how to combine plants to benefit growth. Has anybody answered? Okay, avoid pesticides and fresh vegetables. Organic is personally satisfying. That's true. Learn how to combine benefit plants. Okay. I don't remember the mushroom part. Okay. You don't remember the mushroom part? Okay, just review the replay then. Because we're going to have to go along. Sorry, Sarah. But I will say, so finally, they're medicinal. As you know, penicillin is from a mushroom, from fungi. And then they can be biological pest control. Finally, there's something called micro-remediation, which is so exciting because they detoxify the soil. So don't eat mushrooms just randomly. Mushrooms always have to be cooked, because they are known to take in the toxins from, this is oil-spilled soil that has been contaminated with oil, and it's dead soil, but they grew oyster mushrooms on it, and after 16 weeks, there was an increased soil toxicity reduction, or there was a reduction of soil toxicity. And as you can see, life is starting to grow on this plot. So here we go. This is the second layer, okay? Happiness is finding a mushroom. Digging Up Roots. And that's my mate. Name that tune. Do you know what that song is?
Cindy already got it.
Cindy already got it? Man! Oh, okay, you get a packet of seeds. That's not fair. All right. Cindy already got it and she wrote it down. Well, if anybody else figures it out, you can write it down as well, and I will give you kudos at the end. Okay. Root crops. What edible root crops would you like to grow? So we're going to go through the different types, okay? Now, throughout this webinar, I'll be using something called a garden planner, which you can find on our website. And this is an example of a garden plan of the White House. And we hope to create our own because it's very, very easy to use. Well, confusing at first, but for screenshot's sake, it's so easy to see what you're doing. So start with a blank canvas at first, and we're going to add the layers of plants you are selecting for your own garden this year. Okay, if you have your handout, have it handy, right? Use that. If not, find a blank paper or a grid paper. So here are some examples of root crops. I've left them intentionally blank for you to see if you can spot any ones that you look familiar. There are so many different kinds of roots. There are rhizomes, corms, bulbs, tubers, stolons, and I cannot discuss that here, but there are the answers. But here are some of the choices that are embedded in that garden planner, which has a really impressive library of different plants to choose from, I have to say. I've used different garden planners, and this one it's not the most, it's not complete, in my opinion, but it's the most complete of all the garden planner apps I've seen out there. So choose one. Let me go back again so you can select, okay? Choose one or two, choose what you want to grow, and let's pretend that you're growing on a square foot garden, which is 4 feet by 4 feet in this case. Drew some artichokes. So these are some more root crops that you can grow if your kids are not allergic to peanuts. So I'll choose beets for this example and go on to the next layer. Happiness is finding a mushroom, digging up roots, and covering the ground. Okay. So ground cover is any plant on or near the soil surface that protects the soil against the erosive actions of raindrops. In fact, in Australia, without adequate ground cover, 85% of the rainfall from individual storms can run off and they won't be available and seep into the soil. And this is true in most drier areas. So I know some people are from Louisiana. You may have storms then, but then you guys get the most topsoil erosion, right? So you don't want that to happen. Ground cover, living ground cover, not just dead mulch leaves, which is also good, is the way to go. So here are some examples of edible ground covers. Like I said earlier, you want to hit as many benefits per plant that you choose. So I'll show you the names of those plants later on. Yes, so that's what I just said. Okay, and if we don't design our plants, it'll default into weeds. So you also want to plant very intensely. The way of the essentialist means living by design, not by default. You want to plant intensely and intentionally. So why use ground cover once again? Let's review. It keeps the soil moist. If you're in a hot climate, it keeps the soil warm. If you're in a cold climate and it's snowing, it holds the soil together, and that's why it needs to be living. This is hairy vetch that I've grown on a berm, on a plot of land in the permaculture garden in the school. It releases nutrients to the soil. So depending on what ground cover you choose, ground cover if it's living ground cover will release nutrients to the soil. It lessens and eliminates the weeds if you put that ground cover close enough to all the other, space it properly with all the other plants that you have in your garden plan. And it's edible. It can be edible. It can be medicinal. So once again, if you're wondering, these are the items or selections you can find in that garden planner that I mentioned that's available on our website. If you see these numbers like 16, 1, strawberry, 4, This simply means that's the number of strawberry plants you can plant in a square foot. Okay, so naturally, initially when you plant those, they need some ground cover. So there are also other things called cover crops. So, or they need some mulch. So you want to make sure that you only plant the recommended number for that plot, or they will outgrow their space. And these are some examples that we have here of ground cover that have different benefits, aside from the fact that they keep your soil moist. Aside from it, like if you were to choose between English ivy, which also has a medicinal property but is very invasive, versus thyme and oregano or strawberry, would you not choose something else? So here are some other non-edibles that I still use in the children's garden, like lamb's ear or dianthus, because dianthus is our flowers. And sweet potatoes can also be ground cover. They're both root and ground cover. So some of these layers overlap. Nature is not limited to 7 layers. In fact, within each of these layers, you have layers within the layers, sub-layers, and you can exhaust a layer, which is why we have a permakit, which is basically a guild in a pot. This is a ground cover option for the hotter climates. Like in Arizona, if you check on the Arizona extension for gardening or for growing extension service, they have recommendations for what you can use as ground cover in your climate. So the ice plant figures in there a lot. So let's say I choose beet for this square foot garden and strawberry and oregano as my ground cover. Happiness is finding a mushroom, digging up roots and covering the ground. Happiness is an edible climber. So vines are edible plants that can grow vertically. And this gives a third, vertical dimension to your plant guild. Don't just think of planting in rows. Think of planting upwards, and especially if you have a small space, think of trellising, and think of what, at this point, when you choose your edible vine, you can think, can I plop a tree in there that it would grow upon, and what kind of tree would that be? We'll find that out later on. So these are some examples of smaller edible vines that you can grow. Pole beans, soybeans, fava beans, and anytime, so everything in blue, see, they even have it color-coded in this planner. Everything in blue is a legume, which is very beneficial to any garden. Anytime you plant a legume, it's good, because legumes have partnered with bacteria called rhizobium that create these nodule pockets on their roots, and they have a friendship where, okay, rhizobium gets carbohydrates from the plant, and it gives it nitrogen, because most plants that we like to grow want nitrogen, and nitrogen is not readily available for them in the form that they need it, because most of the nitrogen is in the air, so they don't get it in the soil, and somehow rhizobium make it easy for them to get the nitrogen that they need. So these nitrogen-giving fixing plants are great companions for any garden, and they serve as an edible climber as well. Most gourds are edibles. So here are bigger versions of edible climbers. If you have, the nice thing about the planner is that it'll show you just how the radius at which that you need for your plant. At least these are recommendations. You can train these plants in a certain way so that they don't take up that much space. But these are just how they tend to grow. So grapes, kiwis, hops, loganberry. So let's put our edible climbers, let's say pole beans, on our plan here. So we have beets, oregano, and strawberry as ground cover, and pole beans as our edible climber. Now you also want to think of guilds when you select your plants. I mean guilds or known guilds, such as the Three Sisters Guild. These are already sort of formulas that farmers and plant gardeners have learned throughout the years. This is an Native American guild of beans, corn, and squash, and you can see how the squash have that ground cover component, and the beans are the climbers, and the corn is the heavy feeder, but also gives a lot of food. And they say that there's actually a fourth component to this, and it's an indicator of this, let's see, of this tribe. I think it's the Anasazi tribe, Anansi tribe. I'm not quite sure, that had already been growing 3 sisters, but they also included a 4th sister called the Cleome cerulata, or the Rocky Mountain bee plant, and that brings in pollinators. So you also think of that dimension when you choose your plants. So in a tomato guild, this is a common tomato guild that most gardeners recommend, and it's because tomatoes are often attacked by hornworms, right? The tomato hornworm, and basil plants deflect, because of their aroma, deflect certain pests, and marigolds act as a trap crop for the pests, and also they kill the nematodes, I believe, in the soil. So this is just stuff that's learned by experience, and that we hope that we are all learning along the way. So happiness is finding a mushroom, digging up roots and covering the ground. Happiness is an edible climber, herbs spilling over. That's the 5th layer, herbs. The herbaceous layer, which is plants above ground without a woody stem. And most of your edibles, or your animals that you like to grow, fall into this category, actually. These are tatsoi that we grew. Here are some examples of what you can choose to grow. The broccoli, it'll tell you you can grow 1 broccoli in 1 square foot. That may be not true, because we've grown quite a few in our little plot. But so that, like, take a note and pick which one. Let me just go back and see what your answers are. It really works. Cindy, thank you. Yes, Paula. Oh yes, my seed swap sister, you are here. Okay, let me go back to I was just looking at your answers, guys. So take note, what do you want to grow from this list or this list? So all of these are flowers and herbs, and the flowers have so many different functions. So I've chosen to do a tomato guild. So I've marigolds, basil. I put the marigolds and basil here, and prepared the tomatoes to enter. Like, I've labeled the tomatoes as the next guild. So happiness is finding a mushroom, digging up roots and covering the ground. Happiness is an edible climber, herbs spilling over, berry bushes around. So shrubs are woody plants. So tomatoes, I just thought they're kind of bushy, so they're not technically a shrub. But I'm just gonna, for the sake of this square foot garden, I'm just gonna label it like a bush of sorts. And these are some berry bushes that you might want to grow. And as you can see from this, they take up a little bit more room than would be available in a square foot garden. But a bay tree is a bush. It's a woody stem sort of tree, and it can be included in a square foot garden. So start to think, can this layer be incorporated in your garden as well, given your space? So I have put tomatoes in here. And I have my guild all ready. And finally, oops, happiness is a, oh no, finding a mushroom. You can sing along with me, digging up roots and covering the ground. Happiness is an edible climber, herbs spilling over, berry bushes around. Happiness is laying down under a canopy, and happiness is climbing up a tree. So the only difference between the understory, as we mentioned earlier, well, go to the previous slide, we have an understory and a canopy. And the only difference really that they have is that is height. So where you're growing, you want to make sure that the canopy layer, which is the higher layer, 30-foot trees and taller, does not shadow all the things that you're growing underneath. And if you don't need it, because you have a small space, you don't need a canopy layer. But an understory layer or a 10-foot tree, a dwarf tree, to just add some more fruits in there can be a possibility. Here's a food forest by Michael Judd, who was one of the speakers actually when I did my course. He came and spoke to us about the importance of the food forest and importance of beautiful design in a food forest. Let me just see my notes here. And this again is Martin Crawford's food forest. You can see the comfrey is, well, this plant here on the lower left side. This is a popular permaculture plant that I will discuss in a few seconds. And these are some choices that you may have for your trees. So to espalier is to put your tree in this sort of back against the wall fashion, which we were able to do in our garden as well, in our 1/27th of an acre backyard, townhouse backyard. So this is a fig that we're growing. It's in our prayer corner, and it's fruiting at a time when figs are not in season. But we just bring this fig in and out. So it was given to us as a smaller tree, and then we plopped it outside the yard, and then come December, it can outlast the winter if you mulch it, but we wanted to bring it in because it had fruit on it. And this is an espaliered pear of ours. This is up against our fence. And as you can see, I mean, this is a really kind of flimsy wire. I would suggest a better, sturdier cordon wire as it grows that it can hang on to. And you can see the bean is climbing up on this pear tree, little as it is. This is a picture of our backyard during the summer months. And you can see we have 2 pawpaw trees in the middle that we've plopped into. This is basically roughly the size of a square foot, the left side, this is more than a square foot garden. So you can plop a tree into the middle of your square foot garden. Just make sure that its leaves don't shade the undergrowth. Here are other examples of food forests. So here they've incorporated the canopy layer, which is these pine trees, 30-foot tall trees or more. And they've also incorporated a 9th layer called the aquatic layer here, if you can see the water on the side. So that's the 9th layer, the aquatic layer. So let's review. Happiness is finding a mushroom. This is not in the right order. Digging up roots and covering the ground. Happiness is an edible climber. Herbs spilling over, berry bushes around. Happiness is laying down under a canopy. And happiness is climbing up a tree. Happiness is, I'm just going to go to a picture that's nicer than these slides. Happiness is growing your own food with lots of time to spare. And happiness is, oh my goodness, I can't remember my lyrics, is harvesting your very own food with lots to share. So those are the 7 layers plus 2. Now, before I end, things to consider. This is going to hopefully eliminate some of your questions. When planting, fill in as many niches as possible. Oh my gosh, it's only 8:30. Fill in as many niches as possible. And think of plant compatibility. So included in your workbook is this nifty chart, which I got with permission from AfriStar Foundation, which is a great South African permaculture nonprofit. And they have some general recommendations as to what is a good companion and a bad companion. So you can have that in your workbook. And like I said, our perma kits, which are currently only $19.99, this is a steal, guys. Our plant guilds in pots, and this is our veggie perma kit. Just go to the shop and find it there. So fill in as many niches as possible. Think plant compatibility. and find the functions in your plant. So always ask, like, is it edible? Is it medicinal? Is it an insectary? Does it deter pests, or does it attract the good bugs, and does it deter the bad bugs? My county is Washington. And then does it provide a windbreak? Is it a redundant thing? Are you only planting one of those things? Plant several of them. And this is not one function, multiple elements, but rather multiple elements, one element, multiple functions. So one element is comfrey, and comfrey, like I said, is a favorite permaculture plant. It is medicinal. It's also called knit bone because it was used by the monks in monasteries as for anything, for whenever you had injuries. It's a perennial. You don't need to replant it. It's a dynamic accumulator, which is a fancy word for saying it's an instant fertilizer. You chop and drop it as it goes. It'll grow again. It'll grow upwards again. But all its choppings will serve as a very good fertilizer for your tree or your whatever is nearby. It serves as a ground cover or an herbaceous layer. It's an insectary because of the flowers. So once again, when you're deciding, okay, should I plant peppers or should I plant, for the sake of contrast, English ivy? So peppers would have these, you think about them in this sort of way. And this one I got from my teacher, Wayne Wiseman, who was taught by Bill Mollison, the founder of permaculture himself. And that's why I consider myself a grandchild of Bill Mollison. What are its ecological functions? So peppers actually deter certain pests, and they put manganese into the soil. So you think, how does it affect its environment? And what does it take in from that environment? So it's a heavy feeder. It requires a lot of nutrients, and it needs full sun. What are its strengths? It's fast growing. It's fast growing. It's hardy, I guess. Well, I don't know, not really hardy, but that's one of its strengths. And then weaknesses, it's susceptible to fungal disease. And what are its human uses? So it's edible, it's medicinal, it can be a compost when it dies, it's ornamental even. So you can make yourself your own mind map. So fill in as many niches, think of plant compatibility, what are the functions it provides, and the interactions or relationships it builds. Like I said, we are building webs or internets of our own within the garden. So you have to think, when, like Jeff Lawton, who's another permaculture teacher and taught by Bill Mollison, likes to say, when you in your garden, you don't have a mosquito problem. You have a lack of dragonfly problem. You have a lack of toads or a frog problem. So you think about it that way instead of saying, I need to instantly eliminate the bug, right? And also, there's a long-term vision that you can't build a garden in a day. So you have to be, I mean, those mosquitoes are going to hang around until you have stability, diversity first, and stability next in your garden. So the more elements you have, the more redundant, resilient your garden will be. Fill in as many niches. Think of plant compatibility. What are its functions? What are its relationships within your garden? And how many perennials can I squeeze in? And so what I like about the garden planner is that it gives you a handy plant list like this at the end. So these are the plants we chose for that square foot. And I hope that you guys are also being able to select what plants, or if not, at the end of this, you can certainly sit down or tomorrow. And when I give you guys the workbook, you can go through the steps again and figure out your own plots. This is something that Robert Hart said, and it serves as an inspiration for us, that obviously we cannot all restore forests, but we can build up new city forests. We have gardens. We have access to gardens. We can grow our own food. We can build city forests. And to help us out, so now Dave is going to come in, and I am going to put him on the spot here to explain to you a little bit more about the community that we're hoping to build online. So you can get your garden planner that way through clicking on that leaf, but you can also click on that leaf, and Dave is going to explain the seed swap and how we can create our own barter economy online and not use any money. So I'm going to put you on the spot, love.
So part of the reason that we started this PermaKit site was to try and grow a community online and provide inspiration so that sometimes when you're growing food, you can think to yourself, oh, it's so difficult, and it's some of the plants are just dying for some reason. So we wanted to create a community where we could kind of bolster each other with that. So we're still in the process of building it up, but one of the first tools that we've come up with, I'll just see if I can screen share here. No. Let's see. Sorry, bear with me. So Nix, do I have to open it up in a separate browser window?
Separate window, babe.
Yeah, it's in a separate window.
Okay, so click on the screen share, the green button that's on the left side.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the actual.
Okay, so maybe something happens when everybody's online and then we can't screen share other windows except for PowerPoint.
Yeah, let me bring up Chrome and I'll see if I can.
Okay, well, while you're doing that,
while I get that going.
Okay, so I'll halt you and talk a little bit more. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so the seed swap, and my seed swap sisters are here. At least one of them I saw. Layla Storm, are you here? I have Paula Thomas, who is a photographer, and she has a bunch of seeds to share. And Layla, who is the Emmy Award-winning producer, who has a lot of seeds to share as well. Okay, I think Dave has it online.
Yeah, I think I got it now. I just had to open up a separate a Chrome. So okay. This is our site that we built, started about a month and a half ago. I've added a new menu here. If you go click on the leaf, then you can go to My Seed Library. I'll just log in first. So once you register, you can go to this My Seed Library. So this is our first cut at trying to create a way for you to swap seeds online. Once you go to My Seed Library, you can add your, you can click here and add any seeds that you'd like to catalog. And one of the options that you have, you can choose whether you want to swap or not. So there's various selections here. This is just our first attempt at we were trying to think about what categories you'd be interested in sorting by. But once you have added that, if you set it to swap, then it becomes available on these other two pages, the annual and the perennials page. So if I go to the perennials page, you can see here, this would be like a common area where you would see anybody who's shared their seeds. And then if you're interested in a specific person's seeds, then you can click on their name here and it'll bring you to their profile. And then you can click on private message and send them a little blurb about you're interested in the seeds and set up a seed swap that way. So this is just our first attempt. If you're interested in swapping seeds, if you could try it out and then give us feedback on how we could improve it. We could do things like add pictures or provide some other functionality. So this is just our first attempt to try to get a communal spirit to be able to share our seeds. And these ones that we've put ourselves are actually valid. So if you'd like to swap some cuttings, we have some spare blueberries and raspberries. So I'm going to hand it back to you. Next.
Thank you. All right. Am I presenting to everyone? I'm not quite sure how to do this now, Dad. I think your screen is still on. Okay. So I will. Okay, there. Thank you. So now we head on to the question and answer portion. So anybody here? Yep. So anybody here who has a question still about has this been helpful to you? Has this 7 layers of a food forest plant guild design webinar been helpful to you? Please type in on the chat box and let us know. And what other questions, what other burning questions do you have that we could answer specifically for you guys today? We'll try our best. There are 33 of you here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So that it. I'll wait because I know that it takes some time to type. So I wonder if you can still remember the song. Happiness is finding a mushroom. What were the numbers that were in the boxes of vegetables? Good question. So the numbers that were in the boxes of vegetables, and it's in your workbook as well, tells you how many you can grow within a square foot. So in a square foot garden, it's 4 by 4. It's not 1 by 1. It's 4 by 4 feet. And if you're planting that way, it gives you the numbers of how many you can plant within 1 square foot. Now, the other thing about the garden planner is if you're not planting in a square foot garden, if you just drag that plant along, it will show you how many you can plop into the ground and how many you should. So the spacing is automatically built into that program. I hope that answers your questions. Yes, so seem to help. Review some understory options, please. Okay, good question. Some understory options. So let me just look at my list. Alder is another tree. Oh, so at the end of my presentation, I didn't quite show this. Let me screen share that back. I have a list of some other people that you can check out. Oh, so yep, I'll go back to that. So temperate climate permaculture has a large range of selection that he has, and integrated forest gardening. Integrated forest gardening by Wayne Wiseman. Another book is Edible Food Forest Gardens, Edible Forest Garden by Dave Jackie. And I have these as resources in the workbook as well. But temperate climate permaculture has an entire list, which he has cobbled over from people like other authors like Dave Jackie. And let me read out from his list now, because let's see, 9 plants. So alder, 9 plants. Bamboo, even apple, black locust, cherry, black cherry, sweet cherry, tart cherry, chestnut, lime, linden. Now, when you plant walnut, remember that it has jugulone, which is it's an allelopathic tree, which is, you cannot plant other things nearby it. So that's for walnut. Osage, orange, pea tree, pears, pecans and hickories, Persian silk, juniper. We have a lot of junipers in our backyard, and they provide juniper berries. Raisins, service trees, rowans, white beams, mountain ashes. Willow. Willow is good because you can create fences from its cuttings, and you can create living fences from its cuttings. So a cutting from a willow will actually bloom again somehow. So those are canopy layers, and the subcanopy are similar. It's just an added one was elderberry into the subcanopy. Filberts, jujube. These are not commercial. Like if you go to Meadows Farms or a commercial grower store, you will probably see apple or pear, but you won't see jujube, or you won't see gummy berry, which is another plant. So the plants that we are suggesting here, and the plants that are in, a lot of the plants that are in that garden planner are plants that have several of those, knock out several of those benefits that we were talking about. So you have a lot of benefits, one element having a lot of multiple functions. Does that answer your question? Okay. Is this the first step? Oh, is the first step to plant mushrooms? Okay, so the first step is to inoculate your garden with mushrooms. Now, there is an inoculant that we sell with the permakit, and that we're going to sell. We just got an email from Paul Stamets, the mycologist I was talking about. He's really great. He's very hands-on, and he sells all sorts of mushrooms. He sells mushrooms to like spawn and grow your own, and he sells the myco grow, which is what you would scatter in your garden and create that fungal layer that might. Now, once your fungal layer is there, it's perennially there, so that's a good thing. But the fungal layer is killed when you till your soil, which is why, if some of you have come over from Katie Kimball's Lazy Gardening 101, Katie, if you're here, hello, thank you for that, for promoting us. If you've come on from that Lazy Gardening 101 blog that I wrote, I said do not till, and that is for a myriad of reasons, but one of which is that you kill that fungal layer that's so crucial to your garden. And now, if you don't have that fungal layer currently, you can inoculate your soil, which is so easy, with a pellet that comes in our permakits, and that's MycoGrow. And our permakits come with that fungal pellet, the mycelium, and it comes with rhizobium, so the bacteria as well. Oh, thank you, Bonnie. That is so great to hear, because we've prepared a lot for this. Thank you. So happy that we could help. And yes, so coffee grounds. You know what? That's my favorite thing to do, is to go to Starbucks and not buy coffee, because then I do what Bill Mollison just talks about here in this previous slide. So let me show you that slide. Screen share. The greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production, even if on a small scale in our own gardens. Because if only 10% of us do this, there's enough for everyone. Hence, he says, the futility of revolutionaries who have no gardens, who say, we want to change the world, but they don't plant, who depend on the very system they attack, who produce bullets and words, not food and shelter. So stop sharing. I'll go back to myself. We love pawpaws in the shade. Yes. Okay. Who else? Are you looking for shade? Okay. All right. When you first started your garden, did you use a method like, yes. So Kathy, we did lasagna gardening, and it's really more simple. Sorry if I'm fuzzing in and out. Than it sounds. So the first layer is always cardboard mulch. And that was what, if you were here, I think in the beginning, where I was trying to find, if you can, I will send the link to that video. I can't remember what the name of that video is right now, but it shows you how he started by cardboard mulching a parking lot. And so if you have like bad soil, cardboard mulch it. Then you mimic the soil layers that would naturally occur anyways, the different soil horizons. So then you would put in something in the middle that would be fertile, very humusy. So your kitchen garden scraps. You can lasagna garden using anything that you have at home, shredded paper, all the shreddings from your paper shredder, all the homework that your kids don't need anymore. So that goes in, that's natural. Then coffee grounds, and we do manure from like the horse farm that gives it away near our place, or if you have, what else? So, eggshells, banana peels, and then you put straw on the top, and maybe if you have some topsoil that you can get initially, but this will be the only time you'll be hauling in topsoil, because the point of permaculture is that you're not, what is the definition of sustainability? Most people don't know. So sustainability means not needing, that the output is bigger than the input in the end, and gets bigger and bigger. So it's not sustainable if you keep on putting into your garden, and it needs to be refreshed every day, every year. You need to put new topsoil and new mulch and new topsoil and new mulch. You want to grow that topsoil up to a decent level. So that's what we hope you can do. You have an experience with Moringa oleifera, you live in zone 9. Oh, Moringas are awesome. Okay. I do not have an experience with them because we do not live in zone 9, but they are leguminous trees, I believe. And they're always used. Jeff Lawton, if you go to Permaculture Research Institute or jefflawton.com, he has a ton of videos that he's like an inspiration to us, and he features Australian climates which have moringa trees. I believe they're leguminous, which there are some trees in the family Fabaceae that have that are nitrogen fixing. So in orchards, in fact, they recommend that when you plant an orchard, you don't just plant one of the same monocrop tree. You plant a nitrogen fixer, an apple, and then a pear, also to confuse the bugs. So have that same mentality when you're planting your guilds in your gardens this year, that you just don't have one row of the same thing, because then that's when the pests will come. Okay. All right. So we've got. Okay. All right. Rutger, I think, is answering. Oh, the leaves can be harvested the first year after, before it becomes a tree. Interesting, Rutger. Thank you. Okay. So this is great. Dave, do you have any last words? Let me unplug. Let me see. Unmute you. You're muted. Dave, do you want to say anything?
No, I just appreciate everybody coming out tonight to attend our webinar. So.
Yes, so finally, our next webinar is on March 9th, a Wednesday, not a Thursday this time, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll put the link up to sign up soon enough. But we wish you all, if there are no longer thanks, I have bad soil, so I will continue with this layering idea. Yes, and Kathy.
There's also the drawing. Let me take care of that now. I'll let you know when I've found who the winner is.
Oh my goodness, that's right. Okay, the permakit. Thank you, Dave. That's why I need a backup. So he's gonna keep the questions coming so that we get to see who the. So sorry, guys. We love. Okay, so. Yes, so the permakit. I'll just show you once again in the slide what you guys are possibly winning. Oh, I have to go to the slide now. Slide. Okay, so the indoor permakit.
I have the winner is.
The winner
is Janelle H.
Janelle H. Are you here?
Yeah, she's here. I'm only picking from our attendees.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So let me cancel that. So Janelle H, are you here? Type on the chat box to say that you hear us. Oh, you're welcome, Sarah. Thank you for your interest, and thank you for coming on board and joining our permaculture family. What is the link to our website? Permakits.com. www.permakits.com. Good question. How wouldn't the apple and pear cross-pollinate? You know what? I don't have any experience in that, actually. But that's what they told us. We're not doing orchards yet, but we will in the future. Okay, I'd heard about it. Thanks for the webinar. Yes, thank you. All right, so Janelle H, did you say? Okay, Janelle H, where are you? And if it's hard, the last winner also couldn't type in fast enough when she was called. So Emmy Fern was the last winner, and now it's Janelle H.
Well, so, hopefully we have your email so we can follow up.
We'll email you. All right. Sorry, I'm fuzzy again, but thank you and good night. Have a good night. We will see you in March. And in the meantime, join us at permakits.com. Okay, bye.